Hi, all dairy-free lady here. Today I'm going to show you how to make this delicious dairy-free chocolate cake. So the first thing you're going to need is a sifter and a bowl. We're going to start with our dry ingredients, 2 3/4 cups of all-purpose flour. So I'm going to do that kind of 1 cup of flour at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and sift just this first cup of flour by itself. And then as I add my second cup of flour, I'm going to also add 1 cup of baking cocoa. So 1 cup of flour, that'll be our second cup. And then I have my 1 cup of cocoa powder. I'm going to go ahead and sift those together. Okay, and now I'm going to add my final 3/4 cup of white flour. And before I sift this last 3/4 cup of flour, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of baking soda and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. I'm also going to go ahead and add my salt, and I'm going to need 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So now I'm going to sift that last 3/4 cup of flour with the other little bit of ingredients. So we'll set this aside because we're going to add this to our wet ingredient. So we've added our 2 1/2 cups of sugar to our mixer. Now we're going to add 1/2 cup of our non-dairy butter. So I like Smart Balance, whatever you like, just a non-dairy alternative type of butter. Then I'm going to add 1 cup of butter flavored Crisco, and it's easiest if you just get these little already pre-measured, because this is 1 cup right here and I can just add it to my mixer. So there's our 1 cup butter flavored Crisco added. So I'm just going to cream together the non-dairy butter, shortening, and sugar. Now that that is creamed together, I'm just going to scrape off my paddle, kind of scrape off the sides a little bit. So we're going to add 4 eggs, 1 at a time. So I'm just going to let that mix just for a few minutes so that all those ingredients get incorporated. Okay, so now we're going to add a lot of the wet ingredients. We're going to add 1 1/2 cups of cashew almond milk, or if you don't have the cashew almond milk, you can just do almond milk. And this is going to seem very wet, but don't worry, when we add our dry ingredients, it's going to look a lot better. And then I'm going to add 1 1/2 tablespoons of vanilla. So I know that seems like a lot of vanilla, but it really makes for a good rich cake. And I'm going to go ahead and let that mix. Okay, and then I'm going to scrape down some of this on my paddle. So now I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of either some very strong coffee or espresso. And then I'm going to add 1/4 cup of maple syrup, and we're going to mix that on low. So now I'm going to start adding a little bit of the dry ingredients into all of this wet ingredients. So I'm just going to add a little bit at a time. And then I mix and add a little bit more. And as it mixes, you can just start adding a little bit more at a time. So about halfway through, you can see it's starting to get pretty good, but I'm gonna get all this stuff that hasn't been incorporated, scrape it down off my paddle, scrape the sides again. You can see some of the dry ingredients aren't getting mixed very well. So I just kind of take a break, scrape it down, and then add some more. Okay, I'm going to give this one last scrape down because I see a lot of the dry ingredients collecting once again. I'll just make sure I get all of it in there. Okay, so now that we've got it scraped down one last time, we're going to go ahead and mix it for a little bit longer, another minute or so. Okay, so that ought to do it. And then you can either do 2 8-inch rounds for your cake, or you can do a 13 by 9 pan. If you use a glass pan, be sure to spray it or grease it. You can even, if you grease it, you can even add a little bit of sifted cocoa to help it not to stick to the bottom of the pan. And then I'm going to go ahead and transfer this to a non-stick 13 by 9 pan. Okay, so now we're going to transfer this to our cake pan. And even the batter for this cake is good, so you may not want to just rinse this off really fast. You may want to taste some because the batter is even really good. Although, you're not supposed to eat batter, so I didn't say that. So I just kind of spread it out as evenly as possible. Sometimes if you want to tap it down, if you're worried about any air bubbles, you can just, tap it down a little bit by taking it on the sides like that. Just tap it down a little bit. That just works out if there's any air bubbles in your cake. Okay, so now that our batter is ready and in the cake pan, we are going to cook it in our 350-degree oven for 45 to 50 minutes. So I tested it with my toothpick, so never mind my holes, but it comes out clean. So it is ready. I'm going to let it cool before I ice it. That'll hide these little places where I tested. So yeah, it looks good. Here we have a moist, delicious, dairy-free chocolate cake. For this recipe and more dairy-free recipes, visit alldairyfree.com.